Welcome to part 2 of the TTC journey video. Before I get into this, I want to be upfront. This is not a medical advice. I'm not a doctor or a fertility specialist. I'm a 35-year-old who obsessively tracked a lot of things over a 4-month period, learned a lot of things through reading research papers and going down several fertility Reddit rabbit hole. So this is my personal experience, shared as unfiltered as I can, in the hopes that this is going to help someone who is on a similar journey. We'll be talking a lot of TTC lingo, things like EWCM, egg white CM, BBT, basal body temperature, OPKs, BD, flow, supplements, so on and so forth. So every time I use like an acronym, I'll try to make sure that the detail of it is in the screen somewhere. During this TTC journey, there were decisions that I made based on our personal circumstance and talking to our GP and a lot of personal research. Every person's fertility is very different. Take it as one woman sharing her story, not as a how-to guide. Now that the disclaimer is out of the way, let's get into the video. We started trying to conceive in August 2025. At the time, I was 35 and Karthik was 34 years old. And I had a good understanding of my cycle. I'll tell you what that means. I had always been using Flow Premium from the past 5-6 years and I would track my cycle there. The app would tell me when I was ovulating and I just trusted the app. The app would tell me I was ovulating around 14th day to 16th or 17th day of my cycle and I just went by that. So I had a good understanding of what ovulation meant in theory. But the gap between knowing about ovulation theoretically or what your app tells you and actually understanding it by tracking forms the defining theme of our TTC journey. Over 4 cycles, that is between August 2025 and December 2025, I learned a lot of things about my body that I had no clue or that I hadn't learned in the past 35 years. If you drill into this fertility rabbit hole, there are a lot of things that you get to know. If you're curious and if you're interested, this is something that you can learn just to understand your body better. But if you're not someone who is deep into a subject, that's fine. You just have to understand a few basic things. I'll try to walk you through as much as possible in this video. And if there are any doubts, please feel free to comment below. If I don't know, I'll probably have a read and get back to you if I can. So over the 4 cycles, I learned a lot of things about my body. And that's how this video is going to be split over 4 cycles and what I learned and 4 lessons. But before we start talking about all of it, you need to know hormonally what happens in the body over a cycle. So there are different hormones, there are different surges happening. And if you don't know that, this video may not make sense. So here's the overview of what actually happens in a 28-day or however long your cycle is. Here's a 60-second hormone primer. It may go slightly longer. Your cycle has 3 phases. Let's call it that. The first phase is the follicular phase. The dominant hormone in this phase is estrogen. This phase lasts from day 1 of your cycle, that is your day 1 of your period, up until ovulation. This is the phase where your body prepares the egg to be released. And this is also the phase where cervical mucus goes from dry in the initial days to sticky to slightly creamy. So you can start observing your cervical mucus. For a healthy individual, for a healthy woman, this goes from dry to sticky to creamy as the estrogen builds. This is all you need to know about follicular phase. The next phase is the ovulation phase. You know how I said in the first phase, estrogen is the dominating hormone. The closer you get to ovulation, estrogen peaks, which in turn surges another hormone called as luteinizing hormone, and or it can be referred to as LH. You would have seen LH, and this is the hormone that your ovulation kits detect. So estrogen peaks, and right before it peaks, it also lets another hormone called luteinizing hormone surge in your body. Now that LH surge tells your body that the egg needs to be released. And once that LH surge is detected, from there, anywhere from like let's say 12 to 36 to 48 hours, the egg is released and ovulation happens. This is also the period when you're most fertile and your cervical mucus is most fertile here, and it changes to a stretchy egg white texture, also referred to as egg white CM, EWCM. In the TTC community, you would see this as EWCM. So things you need to know is estrogen peaks, which lets LH peak, and LH causes the ovaries to release that egg, and that egg is released. It can release anywhere from 12 to 48 hours or whatever. And during this phase, your cervical mucus is very stretchy and egg white CM. So after ovulation, the next phase is your luteal phase. Progesterone is the dominating hormone here. Now, progesterone is the hormone that causes your basal body temperature or your body temperature to rise, and it stays elevated until it drops just before your periods. This is if you have not conceived in that cycle. The things you need to know is after ovulation, progesterone becomes the dominating hormone and it raises your basal body temperature slightly. And it keeps it like that until it drops just before your period or on the morning of your period. This could be different for different people, but around your period, the progesterone drops and your basal body temperature drops. This is also when you start feeling PMS symptoms, fatigue, mood changes, hunger. For different women, it's different things, but yeah, you start feeling all those things. That's progesterone doing its job. Now, I hope you understand the three different phases in a cycle. Now, what happens if you have conceived in a cycle? If you have conceived in a cycle, your basal body temperature stays elevated past your 14 days or 15 days, however long your luteal phase is in a normal cycle. Let's say you have a 28-day cycle. Your first phase is about 12 or 13. Follicular phase is about 12 or 13 days. Your ovulation happens for 4 days, and then your luteal phase happens for another 14 days or something. Let's say if you have conceived in a cycle, your basal body temperature stays elevated beyond that 14 days. And that is one of the easy ways to kind of guess that maybe you could be pregnant, okay? Or maybe that cycle was successful. It need not be that in every single case. It requires a lot of tracking and keeping track of your body and different things happening in the environment as well. But these are some of the ways you can keep track of it. So you know how a body behaves when you have conceived and also when you have not conceived. So when you have not conceived, your body temperature drops. Once again, you get your period and the cycle continues. If you have conceived, your body temperature doesn't drop and it starts producing a hormone called as HCG, and that's what your, let's say, pregnancy test detects. That's another science episode. I don't want to get into that. But now that you understand your cycle and the different hormones, OPK is a ovulation predictor kit and BBT is your basal body temperature. OPK is like a test, like a strip like thing where you pee on it or you collect your pee on like a cup or something, and you can dip that strip on it and it comes up with a line if you're ovulating. Depending on what kind of OPKs you use, there are like digital ones, there are like that strip based basic ones. I'll link some of the things that I used. I bought them all from Amazon. I'll just link them if you want to use the same things that I got. But that's your OPK kit to track your ovulation. This is for your timing, the middle part that I said, the second phase. And then BBT is just you keeping track of your body temperature. What was your body temperature in your follicular phase? What was your body temperature at the time of ovulation? What was your body temperature at the time of luteal phase, right? This is for you to keep track of. This is only if you want to go into this rabbit hole. And for someone like me who kind of goes deep into a subject, I was fascinated doing all of it. I was also having fun and I started obsessing over these things, and I was looking at patterns and charts and going into Reddit forums. You need not do all of it. You can just let it be. But if you're interested, there's also this. Now that you know the hormonal cycle of a body, let's talk about a cycle one. This is August-September 2025. This cycle, I would call it as a crash course, only because this was the first time I had bought myself a Clear Blue Advanced Ovulation Predictor Kit, and I was using it for the first time. I always trusted what my Flow app was telling me, and according to my Flow app, for that cycle, it told me that I was ovulating or was meant to ovulate around CD14. When in the TTC community, if someone says CD, that means cycle day, right? It was telling me around cycle day 14 is when I would ovulate. But when I started testing, I think I started testing using the Clear Blue strips around cycle day 10 or something, only because I ordered from Amazon and it arrived only around that time. So I started using day 10 or day 11. I can't remember exactly. And if you've used Clear Blue, that advanced purple thing, OPK, you know that it shows 3 levels of fertility, like your low, high, and peak. and that is indicated by an empty circle, a flashing smiley, and a static smiley. Low is an empty circle. Flashing smiley means that your estrogen has peaked. Now that is going to cause your LH to peak soon. So you would get a flashing smiley, and then the next day, or depending on the timing and how your body works, it could be after a couple of hours even, is your LH surge. That is your static smiley, peak ovulation. For me, what happened was it went from low for a couple of days and suddenly went to peak. I had missed the estrogen surge, the flashing smiley part, in the month of August. And this was still me figuring out how to use this kit and what different things meant and how am I, like, when do I start using it, blah, blah, blah. And I went into another Reddit rabbit hole to understand how this clear blue advanced purple thingy is meant to be used. And this cycle, it didn't work. Now, I correlated this cycle as something where we missed the window only because I had not seen a high or the estrogen surge, and it's possible that I missed the window and it never picked up the right thing. And this was part of my learning cycle. The lesson I learned here was the ovulation that your app tells you could be very, very different to the real ovulation. You should start testing and tracking so you know when the ovulation is happening, or you can take a good guess of when the ovulation was happening. Don't rely just on the app to tell you that you are ovulating. You may not be ovulating. Even when you track consistently, it's possible that certain cycles you may ovulate on CD16 and certain cycles you may ovulate on CD18, and that timing matters a lot. Now let's talk about cycle 2, September to October 2025. The first cycle didn't work and I started correlating to me missing the timing of it, and I was reading a lot about these things. In the first cycle, it was all about the OPK. In the second cycle, it became OPK as well as basal body temperature. In terms of OPK also, I bought some cheaper strips because I wanted to try and test a couple of times during the day so I can catch the estrogen rays as well. Let me know in the comments below if you want to understand how that clear blue purple thing works, because it is not very straightforward, or for people where the surges are really quick. I can explain to you in detail in a separate video. I don't want to get into it. But anyway, just remember that in my mind, I thought I missed the high in the first month. So I need to make sure I don't miss it this month. And this was the second month of tracking. I wasn't even sure this month if it was going to show up or not or anything. And just to be super duper sure, I bought myself another set of strips which are very cheap and I can test a couple of times during the day. And I also bought myself a thermometer during this time because I'm learning all these things and I want to try and track for my own body and learn about my own body. In the second cycle, it was so weird. In the second cycle, the clear blue, the advanced one, it detected the low, it detected the high, and it also detected the peak. And I also confirmed it with the basal body temperature, the tracking as well. So I can see that my temperatures were low. At one point, it became high and it stayed high. I also confirmed it with cervical mucus. So everything aligned, and in my mind, I'm doing everything right. Then came the 2-week wait. If you are in the TTC community, you already know how dreadful 2-week waits are. Every symptom you're kind of correlating to, like, have I conceived in this cycle or not? So my 2-week wait in this September-October cycle was, I was so warm and I was so feverish this entire time. Remember the hormone TED talk that I gave you earlier? Progesterone causes the temperature to rise and it keeps it elevated. If the temperature is elevated beyond the day your period is meant to arrive, it's possible that you have conceived, right? So in this case, my period hadn't arrived, but my temperatures were so elevated and I was for real sick, but I didn't correlate to sick and I was still pushing myself. Usually my periods are like, they're not as painful or anything, or I don't know, maybe I deal with the pain a bit better or what, I don't know. Like, they're not dramatic for me. They're just any normal day. I still go about my day. I do gym, I do everything. But in this 2-week wait, I was feeling so sick. My temperatures were so high. I could feel my breast to be tender. You know, everything that confirms that, you know, you are pregnant. So I was correlating every single thing to that. It's possible progesterone is doing it. It's also possible you're just sick and that sickness is causing you cold and you're making it sick and your moods are low and all that, right? So it could be anything. But for me, because I've never experienced that before, I started correlating to, oh, okay, you know how first trimester is really bad for certain people, like they're not feeling well and they're always sleeping. Maybe this is what it is and all that. So I started making those assumptions. And for some people, the 2-week wait does that to them. In this case, what I learned was I was genuinely sick, but I never treated myself for that. I was pushing through the sickness thinking I have conceived in that cycle. I hadn't. So the biggest learning is, even though you think everything has fallen into place and the symptoms are correlating to what you'd expect in a successful cycle, it's possible that you haven't, and you need to try and come to terms with it. Now let's talk about our cycle 3. So October to November 2025. I didn't introduce anything new in this cycle. I was already using the Clear Blue, the expensive advanced OPK. I was also using the cheapy strips. I was tracking BBT. I had data from like previous cycle. And in this cycle, everything worked, meaning I was able to catch low, high, peak using the advanced OPK, and I could confirm it using the cheapy strips, and my basal body temperature stayed elevated in the third phase, which is the luteal phase. And I wasn't sick this time. Like, it stayed elevated, but I wasn't feeling feverish or anything like that, as opposed to my cycle 2. So this cycle was one of the most reassuring cycles. I was ovulating, my body was doing its own thing, the temperatures were elevated. And if you read a lot of TTC content online, they talk about two important things: you need to ovulate and your timing needs to be right. So for us, I felt like everything was right. This is textbook cycle. But this also ended up in a negative test, and that was slightly disappointing, because now you don't know what's going on in your body. But after I started reading about it, it's natural and it's common that even in healthy individuals, there's only 20 to 30% chance of succeeding in a cycle. That's why they tell you that it takes about 6 months or a year or longer for you to conceive or have a successful cycle. If you think about it, there is a lot of process involved in that 2-week wait. Like, your egg gets released and your sperm needs to meet your egg, and they need to fuse, and the zygote, the embryo, it needs to travel, it needs to implant, and for that it needs to produce the right amount of hormones. So there is a lot of biology that's happening inside your body, and all of these chain of events need to happen properly for you to be successful in that cycle. So it's possible sometimes the body is not doing things in the right fashion, or the pregnancy is not healthy, or things didn't happen at the right time, so on and so forth. That's why they say that it's possible that even in healthy individuals, there's only 20 to 30% chance of conceiving in non-cycles. So that is the biggest learning for us in this cycle, because everything else was textbook for us in this cycle. Now let's talk about cycle 4, November, December 2025. In this cycle, once again, I'm not introducing anything new. We're just going about our day. We're tracking same things. So we have the Clear Blue OPK and the cheapy strips and basal body temperature. And something shifted this cycle, because we were very hopeful in cycle 3 because it was textbook cycle. And when me and my husband chatted about it, something shifted in this cycle. We were trying to BD, like baby dance, the thing that you do to make babies. It's referred to as BD in the TTC community, if you didn't know what it is. We were trying to BD only because we were so keen on, making it work and wanting to have a successful cycle and all that. But what shifted in this cycle was our mindset around it. We stopped being BDing as often as we were doing in the previous cycle. We just thought, let's do it not as a chore, but more because we love each other and we wanted to do it, kind of thing, and not more like, oh, let's do it, we want to have a baby or something like that. Because that tends to happen in the TTC community. You do it because it needs to happen, and let's do it in the morning, let's do it in the night or whatever. So that mindset changed. I also had data from like my previous 2 cycles in terms of the OPKs, the ovulations, the temperatures and everything. So we didn't BD as much as we did in the previous cycle. That was one. And the other thing that shifted was, based on my own research, I got Karthik to take CoQ10, that's coenzyme Q10, as another supplement. So both of us, if you had watched our part 1 video, if not, please go ahead and watch it. We mentioned that we were taking Elevate and Menevit. So I was taking Elevate as prenatal vitamin, and Karthik was taking Menevit. He started taking regularly from August after his nose surgery, and that was the only thing he was taking. But in this cycle, based on my own research and my own reading, I got him to take CoQ10 as well. It's over the counter, you can buy it. We bought like a Costco brand or something. A few things that shifted, nothing in terms of tracking, but the timing of our BD and our thoughts around the way we BD'd, as well as the supplement. He started taking coenzyme Q10, and this was our successful cycle. There is one striking thing to note here was, this cycle was very similar to our first cycle in terms of the OPK tracking, meaning the Clear Blue Advanced Digital Kit missed the high. But because I was using a fallback option, so because I was tracking using different things like your LH strip and BBTs and all that, I didn't like stress or anything. Past me would be stressing, oh, did I miss timing? What happened? And all that. But because I had learned all of this and I had like fallback mechanisms, the other strip got the progress beautifully and we made sure we BD'd, and this cycle worked beautifully for us. I don't know and I don't want to correspond it to, let's say, hey, we took this supplement, that's why it worked, or I don't want to say maybe you need to BD less and that's why it worked. This is just our experience and this is how our TTC journey came about. So the lesson here is you can prepare as much as you can, but you still can't control when it happens. The cycle that you succeed will look exactly the same as it has done in your previous cycles as well. So there's not like one thing that you can pinpoint to. In terms of data, for me, it looked exactly the same as my, let's say, cycle 3. Nothing was different. My body temperature stayed elevated. It also happened in cycle 3, right? So you can't differentiate between the cycles in terms of data. You can prepare as much as you can and you let universe and everything else, biology, to do its thing, and it may take its time to do its thing. Now here are some of the tips that I think has actually helped and some that did not. First one is cross-validate. Don't just rely on one data. For me, OPKs were telling about the ovulation. It was telling about the surge. Then cervical mucus was confirming that the ovulation was happening. The temperatures, the elevated temperatures were telling me that ovulation had happened. So it's not just one thing that is giving me data. I'm cross-validating with 3 different ways of tracking tools. You don't have to do everything, but if you have been in this journey for a while and if it's not working, maybe you can start understanding your body a bit better. The next one is egg white cervical mucus is one of the most underrated signs. Nobody tells you that. I wish like our schools and biology classes taught us that. I don't know these days if they are teaching or what, but when I studied, these things were not taught. And it takes a while for us to, as women, at least for some women, at least for me, it took some time to identify what was an egg white CM for me. Like, does it exactly look like egg whites, like the real egg whites, or how does it look, so on and so forth. So it's one of the most underrated signs. If you're not using any tracking and you're just starting out, maybe use that as an indicator and time your BDs around that time. The third thing is, do not symptom spot in your 2-week waits if you can. When I was in my 2-week waits in all these different cycles, I would sit and watch like countless 2-week wait videos and I'll be like, someone would say, I had a pain here and that confirmed my pregnancy on my DPO 5. DPO is days post ovulation. This is your luteal phase. So on my so and so day, this was happening, and I would think, oh, I'm also getting that. Oh, my head is aching. Oh, this is happening. Like I tend to symptom spot, and that in turn like leads to disappointment. If you are someone who gets disappointed easily and that affects your mood a lot, then try not to symptom spot. I know it's easier said than done, but if you can, don't symptom spot. I did it, I'll admit, but I'm not someone who is like getting disappointed by it. I'm just using it as a data. So I'm quite logical and analytical in that aspect. I don't let it affect my mood or anything like that. The fourth and the final thing is, patterns across different cycle beats symptoms in one. You want to understand your body, not just for pregnancy or conception and all that. For me, I am interested to understand how my body functions. I feel like this is going to help me in the future as well. I'll keep tracking, like after baby and after they're born. I want to keep tracking because I want to understand how long these phases are. How can I tailor my exercises, my food and all that around these cycles? I'm just interested in that subject. But the TLDR is, pattern across different cycle beats symptoms in one. What I mean by that is, if it happens in one cycle, it's not necessary that it will happen in another cycle. And my video up until now is a concrete proof of that. I don't know if everyone will do that, but from what I've read, patterns across different cycles kind of beats symptoms in one. If you're currently in the middle of this, tracking, waiting, reading every signal that your body is giving you, then I hope this video is useful for you. The next video in this series is going to be about the symptoms and the things that happened in my 2-week wait in the successful cycle. It will once again be a very detailed, a very data rich video. And if you are keen to know about my 2-week wait, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. And in the Meantime, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to answer as much as I can. But before I go, I want to tell you something. TTC has taught me that there is a difference between preparation and control. We can prepare well, we can learn about our cycles, we can optimize our timing, we can do everything in our power to make things happen. What we cannot do is guarantee a result in a particular month. Now, genuinely accepting that decision, not intellectually, because your mind knows, you know the data, 20 to 30% per month is the probability, even for healthy individuals, whatever. But genuinely accepting that internally makes a lot of difference. And sitting with it makes this journey a lot more manageable. I hope it does the same for you. I'll see you in another one. Bye.